sometimes it's a little hard to communicate to students just how big a deal this is. What you need to know as a student is social media is viewed by colleges in making decisions. They will look at your pages. Okay, let's get to the more fun stuff now. Extracurricular activities. These are great. They do go into who your child is. Admissions in college is very holistic these days. Thankfully, it's moving that way. And they want to know that they're getting well-rounded students on campus, people who are going to contribute to their community, not just, be academics. And so extracurriculars are a great way to show that. But like I said, I don't want this to be a to-do list of like, we must find extracurriculars, and do these specific things. This is not a formula. These are some general suggestions. So have fun with these. These should be a place where your student really gets to exercise their passions. And so you may not find them your 8th grade year or your 9th grade year. That's okay. It may take a little while to settle in. You may have to try to find a few things, but if you just have 50 completely disparate activities on your extracurricular list, one, it's never going to fit on your application. You're never going to be able to talk about all those effectively. Instead, admissions professionals tend to want to see passions and interests that drove that choice and that your students invested fully in. It is a quality versus a quantity measure. So let me give you a few examples of what this might look like. We have the picture there of a soccer player. So let's say your student is into sports. They are into soccer, right? They've been playing soccer since they were little guys, and they love it. This is how they spend their weekends and their evenings practicing with the team. So they have this great extracurricular, and maybe they're even team captain by their senior year. This is great. There's a leadership activity as well. Then maybe their source of income is doing some refereeing for younger kids' games on the weekends, right? That they're refereeing for rec league soccer, and that's how they're earning a little bit of money. Then maybe their volunteerism is something that is related to soccer as well. Maybe they, help coach soccer for an inner city group or a church-sponsored group. And maybe they do a summer missions trip, and they are kind of coordinating the physical activities for, a VBS style mission trip or something along those lines. So there's a lot of ways that they can integrate that. I will give you a couple other options just so you kind of get to see the big picture. Music is a common extracurricular that you would do, right? It may go on the transcript too as a fine art, but let's take one of my kids, or actually two of them, played piano. So their extracurriculars look something like this. They played piano, they took lessons, they did recitals. For volunteer work, they went to retirement homes and they played for people. They would play the pieces that they had mastered as little free concerts for folks in retirement homes. They played for our local church as a volunteer act, as part of worship. They would be part of the worship team and play piano and accompany the church. Eventually, my older son also translated that into a job. He was a paid accompanist at a church all through high school. And so his academic, he had the piece that was, I do this because I love it. I volunteer through it. And it is, part of my paid work. So those were things that really contributed to him having, he actually earned a music scholarship, even though he was not a music major, because he had a really robust music portfolio to take with him to college. All three of my kids have done speech and debate, and that was so beneficial for them. But I'll give you an example from my youngest. So he came into this the longest, right? He got dragged around with the older kids. And so, he was just in speech and debate world forever. So he loved it. He competed. He was very good at it, so he had that piece on his resume. But the other pieces that he had were things like, from his freshman year, he was a student mentor in club. And then by his junior and senior years, he was a student coach in the club. That was volunteer work. He was hired by different organizations to coach debate. And so he earned money coaching debate, doing summer camps and just regular coaching throughout the school year. Then he also started a business with this. He started writing debate briefs and debate cases. And he and another friend began publishing those. They created a website, an order system, a whole set of like, this is how you may use this, and these are the policies surrounding it. And they set all these regulations and things. So he had quite the little business going with his selling debate briefs. And then finally, he had such a passion for this and for research that he and another friend wrote something that they had debated during the year, one of their cases. They wrote that up as a more concise research project and submitted it to think tanks. And they got a think tank to publish them. And so they had to go through the whole editing process of someone else publishing their work that had all the citations and everything with it. And then that was actually picked up by a news organization. And so that was run in 2 different places, the research that he had submitted. All of that stemmed from his love of debate. And so when you can take something like that and find a passion, I'm not saying do this checklist of things, but for him, it just naturally flowed out. Hey, I already have this. I'm already investing time in this. Here's a great way that I can, that I can just keep adding to it because it's how I want to spend my time anyway. So all of that really contributed to how well he looked on a college resume as he was applying to college and scholarships. So that brings up this question of what goes on a portfolio versus what goes on a transcript. And this is where your home life counselors will really help you out. But a couple of things that I want you to consider. If you are putting everything on a transcript, I often see people counsel to do that. Oh, your kid's spending time doing this, add it as an item on the transcript. You can talk more about this in interviews. You can really highlight it as an extracurricular more if it is not on the transcript, because once they're assigned a grade for it, some of that work is considered part of that grade. And so instead, if they are saying, here's this item on the portfolio, I actually never gave my kids credit for speech and debate anywhere on their transcript, even though they did it for numerous years. And I can guarantee you we spent a lot more than 150 hours on it every year. But we only featured it on the portfolio because that's where they stood out. And so you may want, if they're playing soccer, absolutely, that may be your PE credit one year. But really, you want to feature that more on the portfolio a lot of times because that's where they really start to stand out and say, this is how I can talk about what I learned through this activity. Here is how I gave back to my community through this activity. And that's where you start to stand out a little bit more. So ask your home life counselors about that, but not everything has to go on the transcript. And then finally, keep track of those volunteer hours. There are some scholarships available through various state organizations that may reward if you have a lot of volunteer hours. There are also specific scholarships as you apply to colleges. We saw a lot of scholarships that were available from a specific college that were based on if you had done a lot of volunteerism, that they had some specific scholarships for that. So just keep the documentation as you go. The portfolio and home life is super helpful for that, but you may also want to have a spreadsheet where people are like signing off, a member of the organization who supervised that time can sign off in case you need that level of verification. So always better to have more documents than you need. Okay, so standardized testing. Then let's talk a little bit about that. Parents are going to set the tone for testing. So if you're a nervous Nelly about testing, your students are going to read that. And that's really important. Remember that standardized tests do not determine how successful your student will be. It doesn't determine what their future will be. And keep that in mind. Like, it's really okay. We're just going to do it. It's going to be something that we got to get done. But, don't stress over it so much because then it's going to stress your children and your children will not perform as well when they are stressed. So the other thing that I would like to tell you is test early. If you are testing early, it removes a lot of the stress. It also kind of normalizes testing. I actually did testing with my kids when they were younger, even though it wasn't required, just because I wanted them to have the experience of completing some standardized tests from time to time and being like, yeah, it's no big deal. It's just something else that we do. So you can use that approach, and I would encourage you, but at least by high school, be using standardized tests. Just because it's a different skill set. We did almost everything orally or in writing. I did not give a lot of multiple choice tests in my homeschool. So when we went to do standardized tests, it was a different skill set. It was timed. and they had to pick A, B, C, or D. And that is a different skill set, and they need a little bit of time to develop that. So I would say just make sure that they have time to get comfortable with it. The other really beneficial thing is that I started to see where my students' strengths and weaknesses were. If there were things that we needed to address, we could do so. Then the other piece about testing early is that it allows students more time to earn those target scores. You know, if there's a particular scholarship that they want or that they're shooting for, and they only have 1 or 2 tries with the test to get that score, I don't care how much you are chill and low key about it, they're going to know this is super high stakes. If you're waiting until junior and senior years to start testing, they're going to know it's high stakes. They already know that. So testing early, meaning like at least middle school, high school, early high school, can be very helpful, but also don't wait until senior year. I even say don't necessarily wait till spring of junior year to take that first test, because if you can do it earlier, then it's like we told our kids, like, oh, you're going to take it. You don't have to do very well. You got years yet. You got plenty of time. Just go in, do your best, see how it comes out. And a lot of times they got a target score already that then I was like, oh, now you can go take it again. It's no big deal. You already have the score that's going to get you this level of scholarship. No big deal. You know, just see how it goes. Yeah, you've had 3 months more of math. Let's go see how it goes this time. And so we just approached it that way. And it really took a lot of the anxiety out of testing, because they knew that we were okay with it. They were just trying to put their best foot forward. They had plenty of time. So that can be very helpful, because I will tell you, test anxiety is very real and it very much affects test scores. So the feedback that I mentioned, there's analytics on a lot of these tests that give you feedback. Like, this is what they're doing really well. This is where they need a little more work. Then it's not just about the test outcome. It is about their educational growth. You only have this many years that they're home in homeschool. I want to make sure that they're in the best shape that they can be when they go off to college. And so we looked at what those things were that were not scoring as high. And those were things that we could then tweak, or sometimes even adapt, you know, or change curriculum if needed in order to see that something was more successful. And then also build in a little bit of time for practice. I will say I'm not a huge fan of extensive test prep. I think that, you know, having to dedicate months and months or a year to test prep is challenging. Maybe some people want to do that. That was not our approach, but we did build in time for practice, because we did everything orally or in writing. You know, they were writing essays about things. We were discussing things. We were not taking multiple choice bubble and tests. So it did take a little bit of time and practice for them. So, you know, it was nice to have time to do some practice tests, and we kind of built that in. So let's describe test optional a little bit. There's a lot of buzz about test optional. And the definition here is that students can choose whether or not to submit scores, and there is no penalty for non-submission, okay? So it's important to keep in mind just that overall definition. During the height of COVID, well, first of all, there have been test optional schools for a long time. A lot of private schools especially have been test optional. But during COVID-19, this really came to the forefront because a lot of people couldn't access tests at that time. But now that the results are in, we're seeing schools start to reverse those decisions. And so a lot of them, you know, if you're graduating in 2023, you will have to submit a test score. And so a lot of states have already gone back to this. Additionally, we saw like a big school like MIT, a very, very elite competitive school, say, we don't really know if kids are ready for our math program without the test, because grades are not that predictive across the board, because everything, an A from this school means differently than an A from this school. That doesn't tell us if they're ready to engage with our curriculum. You go someplace like UT Knoxville, they don't have remedial course math. They really want to see if your student is ready for the math that they're going to have to take their first semester. So things like that are important to keep in mind. There are reversals on this policy. So I would not want to plan for everything's going to be test optional. I think that may really eliminate some options for you. Even for those schools that are test optional, we have found a lot of caveats to this. So I want you to know these questions in advance. Are the policies different for homeschoolers? If you look at homeschooling pages on the different colleges' websites, you will sometimes find that they are not test optional for homeschoolers. Go in eyes wide open for that. So that's an important question to ask. Are the same merit scholarships available to those who don't submit tests? That is not always the case either. So sometimes students will take, they will say, oh yes, we're test optional, they can get in. But then your access to merit scholarships, which is just the academic kind of scholarships, not factoring in need, that may be severely restricted if you don't have a test score. I have also seen it structured so that so much of this is available, like we will give you up to this amount, but this branch of scholarships is only available if you submit a test score and it's above a certain level. So don't see test optional on a website and just say, okay, we don't have to take a test. There are more questions to ask. Does my state have scholarships that require test scores? I think a lot of you are in Tennessee. There are scholarship dollars available through Hope Scholarship, General Assembly Merit, Bright Futures in Florida. Different states have these scholarship programs, but many of them require that you have a test score. So, and they do differentiate. I know in Tennessee, there's a difference between how homeschoolers qualify for that money and how kids who are in a brick and mortar school qualify for that money. And so make sure that you go in eyes wide open on that issue as well. Then another one that kind of snuck up on a lot of people is that some majors require scores, and this may even be a state requirement. For instance, a school of education often has a state requirement that you have to have certain levels on a standardized test before they can be admitted to the College of Education. This is also true of engineering and nursing a lot of times. Those are the three that I have most often encountered. There may be others as well, but that's a question that you need to ask. If a school is test optional, is it test optional for the School of Engineering or the School of Nursing or the School of Education or whatever it is that your student intends to major in? And then without a test score, will my student have to take a placement test? So I talked to a lot of people that said, oh, we don't do tests. We don't believe in testing. This is not a big, we're just not going to do this. Surprised, their kids got on campus and they were given a placement test to determine which classes they were going to go in. They didn't really avoid testing at all. They just shifted which test they were taking. The nice thing about testing at your choice while they are in high school is that you get a little more preparation for that than you do just given a random placement test based on, when they walk into to the college. So this is very much true at community colleges as well. Like they very often get placement tests. So I hear a lot of people say, oh, well, we're just going to do the community college route. We don't need to test. And that can be true, but be aware that they're likely going to be given a placement test. And if they're struggling with timed multiple choice testing, they're still going to have that barrier. Okay, so I am from CLT, so I have to talk a little bit about classic learning tests. So first of all, there is a HomeLife discount. Make sure that you are aware of that. HLA 2022, you can enter on any test registration and you get 25% off. So we love our friends at HomeLife and we want to make that affordable for you guys. All classic learning tests are offered at home and online. We do have tests for 7th through 12th graders. In 7th through 10th grade, parents proctor those exams. They're online at home, parents proctoring them. This is a great way to introduce your kids to standardized testing. It's a little lower stress because you are still the parent, you are proctoring, it's online. They're like 2 hours long. They're not that disruptive to your day. We are remotely proctoring the college entrance exam. So when college wants to trust us to say that these scores are exactly what they are and the student earned them independently, then we do need to be aware of that. And so those are remotely proctored. Then we mostly partner, especially on the college entrance exam, with faith-based liberal arts colleges. So if that's the kind of college that you think your student might want to attend, just be aware that CLT is a great option for that. So we do have 3 assessments, as I mentioned, 7th through 12th grade, CLT 8 for 7th and 8th grade. These can be taken at the beginning of 9th grade as well if you want to get a baseline. CLT 10 for 9th and 10th grade. Okay, I cannot stress to you enough, you really need to be taking this exam. There are recognition opportunities for 9th and 10th graders. When taken during the 10th grade year, if your student is a really high scorer, there is a scholarship opportunity on that. They have 4 chances to take it during the academic year. Unlike one of our competitors that only gives you 1 chance to earn that 1 scholarship, you get to take it 4 times and your best score is considered. And so I had my son take it all 4 times. And by the way, his last score was not his highest. It was actually one of his earlier scores that earned him an award. You can do free score shares with colleges. Great way to reach out to colleges early, show interest, let them know that, hey, my kid's interested in your school. The student can send those scores to them directly, and it's a great way for them to reach out. From this, we've actually seen a lot of students get recruited for summer programs that they might do at those colleges. And then we do a lot of sponsored tests, especially for our CLT 10. We work closely with our college partners, and they will sponsor those tests so that you can take a CLT 10 for free if you just fill out an interest form on the website. So I'll show you where that is in a minute. Tomorrow is the deadline for the September exam, so you have a chance still to take the CLT 10. Use this exam, use the analytics, and then it really helps move you toward that great practice. And even if you're not going to use the CLT later on, maybe you're going to go, maybe you're trying to apply to UT Knoxville or something like that, and you're going to go with a different kind of exam eventually. This is still online. Well, it is timed, proctored exam that helps your student prepare, plus those analytics are really, really valuable. And then in 11th and 12th grade, this is the college entrance exam. We do have free tests with sponsoring colleges periodically. Sometimes you have to submit an application to that college before you get a free test. Other times it's just an interest form. All of that's on the website. And then the one thing that we hear consistently from our college partners is that they love to see CLT test takers because they stand out from the crowd. A different type of student takes this exam just because it is so heavy in that rich liberal arts tradition. And our math is very rigorous. It is heavily logic and critical thinking based throughout the exam. So it's a great way for homeschooled students to stand out in those things that they tend to be really strong in. So that's my plug for CLT. I'll show you a couple things on the website if we have time. So quickly, I cannot do a presentation about high school, as you prepare for college without mentioning social media. So each family has to make their own decision about what they're comfortable with social media. That is absolutely each family's prerogative. But what I want you to know, what I want students to really know is that every year students are rejected or offers are even rescinded. Scholarships are rescinded based on social media posts. Okay, so sometimes it's a little hard to communicate to students just how big a deal this is. What you need to know as a student is social media is viewed by colleges in making decisions. They will look at your pages. Talk to the admissions professionals. I know this for a fact. Social media is viewed by future employers. It may not even be the next 4 years. It may be years after that. And they are looking at those and they are looking at your history. Decisions that you're making now can affect job and career options years from now, especially if you ever think you want to go into government service. This could be a huge disqualifier. Don't put things out there that you are not okay with every future employer knowing. And so be very, very cautious about this. There is no such thing as a safe platform. My kids explained to me, oh, Snapchat, everything goes away. It doesn't stay there. It's not attached to you. We had instances last year, I think it was, or the year before, where somebody took a screenshot of someone's Snapchat because it was sent to a friend of theirs. They had a falling out with a friend. They had a screenshot of a Snapchat that was then sent to their admissions person at that college, and they lost their academic and their athletic scholarship over something that they had Snapchatted to a friend. So there is no such thing as a safe platform, and you may never be given the chance to explain your posts or your comments. Could be an inside joke, perfectly harmless, but it may not read that way to someone else, and you don't have the opportunity to explain it. You've been disqualified based on their perception of what you posted or even what you commented on. So I cannot stress to you enough how critical this is, that you understand and that you make wise decisions from whatever platform you are using. I'm not saying that it can't be done responsibly. We actually let our kids, as they were a little bit older, have social media and use it. They were just extremely cautious about what they posted. My oldest son very much wants to go to work for government agencies. Pretty much the only thing he puts out there is like when he's hiking. He posts, beautiful pictures of, of where he is when he's hiking, or, or something like that, because he's like, yeah, I don't want anybody to question anything. I don't want even my viewpoints. Like, his viewpoints when he was a junior in high school are very different than his viewpoints after he graduated college. And so he doesn't want a record of that out there, because it could affect, how he's viewed, especially if being pursued by a government agency for employment. Okay, so I will quickly go through this, and I know we've run a little bit long. One thing that you need to know is plan ahead, plan ahead. Talk to colleges early. Admissions professionals love to hear from students that are interested in them and asking questions. Read their websites. Be very, very aware of deadlines. They come earlier than you might think. Many top scholarships have deadlines in the fall of 12th grade. I think we had scholarship deadlines for some of my students that were November 1st. You had to have everything submitted, all scholarship, everything by November 1st. That's pretty early. You got to be working on all this stuff long before 12th grade, if that's the case. For all 4 years, keep a reading list. This is really helpful as you go to talk to people in interviews and things. Stay focused on academics. You cannot let up on the academics. You are preparing for a future in academia, whatever that looks like over the next 4 years. You need to have a strong academic portfolio. And then this is one from my personal experience. Keep your records and portfolios up to date. I was terrible about entering all those extracurriculars and awards, and senior year was always a nightmare with the portfolio and me having to go back through and find all of that stuff and everything that I wanted to include on their portfolio. So use that Apple Core feature and just enter as you go. Make your life less stressful than mine was senior year. Okay, 9th and 10th grade, some general guidelines. Take those standardized tests. Use the CLT 10. Explore colleges of interest, college fairs, websites, that kind of thing. That's a great way to start introducing your student to what's out there. Do some college visits, especially by the end of 10th grade year. Start looking at those colleges that may be of interest and do some college visits. There are lots of fantastic summer programs at colleges and universities. This is a great way to get a feel for the college. Research these, attend some of these. These really helped my students narrow down their areas of interest and what they wanted to major in. So it was not just the college that they were going to, but also it really helped them find their passion and direct which way they wanted to go in their careers. And then start researching college costs and possible scholarships. Folks, I love spreadsheets. I will tell you that. I have big old spreadsheets. This is the cost of attendance, but here are all the possible scholarships. So don't just look at the cost of attendance. That is not the final number. Make sure that you're researching scholarships. We had all of that outlined, and it did eliminate some. There are just not that many scholarship options at the school. We're going to look at these others that have more scholarships and allow us to stack them. So in 11th grade, continue those college visits. Consider those summer programs again at colleges. Take those standardized tests. We started our kids at least the summer before junior year taking the official college entrance exam just to take that pressure off. Research the state scholarships to make sure all requirements are met. There are additional ones sometimes for higher performing students. Make sure that you meet all those requirements. Research outside scholarships. All of my kids took some outside scholarships to college as well. We found some different things. So talk to your HomeLife counselors about some good sources for finding those outside scholarships, and do a lot of Google searches. It can be very much worth your time. Narrow your list of colleges for application during junior year. Like, you really need to be winnowing the list after you do those college visits. And then make a list of important dates and deadlines for applications and scholarships. I cannot stress this enough. You need to know what they are. They're earlier than you probably think. So make sure that you have a list of all those. Spreadsheets are your friend. Okay, 12th grade. Don't lose focus. Senioritis is real. It kicks in a lot of times, but you cannot lose your focus here. These grades count too. Begin applying for colleges as early as summer. If they have rolling admissions, a lot of times you can apply really early. My daughter did all of her college admission applications during the summer before her senior year, before the workload of senior year kicked in. Super beneficial. Track those dates carefully. Make sure that you know what they are. Check email daily. Things are sent to the students, not to the parents. The students are the ones applying. Make sure that they have the habit of checking their email. Practice for interviews. If they're going to do an admissions interview, if they're going to do a scholarship interview, make sure that you set aside time to practice this and rehearse the kinds of questions that they may hear. Make sure that they're ready to respond impromptu to questions they have. And then make sure that your academics are all on track to be completed during spring semester. A lot of colleges are requiring transcripts, final transcripts, to be sent in June. If you school year round like we did, we've really had to adapt senior year because we had to be finished June 15th. And that was a little different than what we had done other years. So make sure that you're aware of what the final transcript deadline is for the college where they are planning to attend. And then don't forget to have fun and enjoy it. It really is a great time. And I just loved the high school years. They were such a blessing to me. And, just make sure that you do create room for them to explore those interests and those passions and really develop into unique people that colleges are going to want to have on their campus, because they're going to bring a tremendous amount to that college community.